A very warm welcome to Moulsford Virtual Open Day, and thank you for joining us this morning. I am Jim Hamilton-Smith. I'm Deputy Head Pastoral here at Moulsford, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk you through how the event's going to run today. Firstly, I want to let you know that this is our first ever Virtual Open Day, and we hope it'll all go smoothly, but please bear with us through our technical hitches, if there are any technical hitches or any delays, hopefully not. You'll also see that we're wearing headsets this morning, which does give us an unusual look of air traffic controllers, but it does actually help us to hear each other and hopefully for you to hear us more clearly too. Now, due to the numbers in the webinar, the settings don't allow us to see or hear guests, but you are very welcome to communicate with us via the chat function, which can be found on the edge of your screen in the controls, sometimes at the top, sometimes at the bottom of the screen, and if you want to locate those now. Please let us know by raising your hand virtually or via the chat box if there are any technical hitches or you can't hear us, and we'll endeavour to resolve things. Now, you may find it easiest to select speaker view, an option normally at the top right of your screen, as opposed to the grid view. This will allow you to focus on each of us as we present individually. Please note that we are recording this event for use on the school website. However, this should not affect you as you will not be on camera and you are not able to hear you. Now, I'm just going to share my screen with you to outline the timetable for this morning. As you can see, we are going to start with Headmaster's welcome, an opportunity to meet some of the staff, as well as our Registrar. There will be a live question and answer session, and that will be followed by a very short online poll. And I know some of you have also pre-booked for some one-to-one meetings with the Headmaster. Now, if you have any questions relating to the school, please use the Q&A function also in your control panel to type in your questions. You can type them at any time as they occur to you, and we will then be answering them live by relevant staff members after the presentations. Please note there is a box that you can tick also if you wish your questions to remain anonymous. Now, the online poll I just mentioned is a great way for us to gain your feedback from the event, and we'd be very grateful if you complete the short multiple choice answers, which will appear on your screen later. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how this morning is going to work, and I will now hand over to the Headmaster.
Very good morning, everyone. I am Ben Beardmore-Gray, the Headmaster here at Moulsford Prep School, and I'm in my 7th year as head of Moulsford. And prior to Moulsford, I was head of Moden Hall, a co-educational boarding school in Northumberland. And before that, I was deputy head of Farley School in Hampshire. I have 3 children of my own who have all been through prep school, and as teenagers, they're now giving us very different challenges through GCSEs, A-levels, and university entrance. Sorry not to be able to welcome you to the school in person today, but we really hope you enjoy our virtual event, which should give you a really good flavour of our very special school and community. We'd hope to start by sharing our school tour video with you, but Zoom unfortunately doesn't perform well when playing back shared video content, and the quality was not up to scratch. So instead, we hope you will choose to view this in your own time, and you should already have received a link via email. We'll resend that after the presentation. One extra piece of news I'd like to share with you is that it was announced this week that Moulsford has been nominated as Prep School of the Year 2020 in the Tatler magazine's School Awards. We'll hear on the 6th of October whether we win the overall title, but it's great to be in the top 5 prep schools in the UK for Tatler. Now, I'm just going to talk to you to give you a feel for the ethos of Moulsford, and while I'm doing so, I'll share some slides. Now, first, the most important aspect of Moulsford is the pastoral side. Our primary aim is for happy and settled boys. And I work on the basis that if boys wake up in the morning and they're looking forward to coming to school, then there is a real chance that they are going to thrive. The relationship between the school, boys, and parents is absolutely key. And we really want to nurture very good dialogue with you as parents so that you can just pass on any information about your boys to us. The more we know about your boys, the better chance there is of them being settled. We have various pastoral layers and structures, all designed to support your boys, and Jim Hamilton-Smith, the Deputy Head Pastoral, will talk more about these later. On the academic front, we have very high standards and high expectations, but we're not an academic hothouse. Our aim is not simply to drill boys through how to pass exams, but it's to prepare boys for life in the 21st century. Tiffany Squire, our Deputy Head Academic, will tell you more about this. The extracurricular program at Moulsford links directly into the overall curriculum, equipping boys for modern life. We have a very broad program covering music, sport, art, drama, outdoor pursuits, and we want boys to try absolutely everything. Over time, they'll probably focus on 4 or 5 areas that they enjoy, and it's all designed to build self-confidence and self-esteem. Now, in a school of 370 boys, manners, courtesy, and discipline are very important to us. And just like in the classroom, we have very high standards and expectations. And our experience is that if you set the bar high, boys will rise. Inevitably, boys can get things wrong and they can step over the line. But when this happens, we always sit them down, and the most important thing we try and establish is what have they learned from the experience. Now, advising parents on senior schools after Moulsford is a key part of my and the school's role. I have individual meetings with all parents in year 5, and I talk them through the options for their sons. We have excellent links with the senior schools, and we give totally independent, tailored advice for each boy. On average, we're sending 54 boys to 14 different senior schools into year 9 every year. And this works out as a split of roughly 50-50 between day and boarding. On the boarding front, Radley, Marlborough, Eton, Harrow, Wellington, St Edward's Oxford, Bradfield and Stowe are probably the most popular schools. And on the day side, Abingdon and Magdalen College School in Oxford are both extremely popular. But both those schools are academically selective, and therefore they're not going to be right for every boy. Less selective schools, but still extremely good schools, would be Pangbourne, Shiplake, the Oratory and Cokethorpe. Now, many boys begin life at Moulsford as 4-year-olds, starting in reception in the pre-prep. And so I'd like to hand over to our head of pre-prep, Mrs. Sabrina McMann.
Thank you very much, Headmaster. As you have heard, my name is Sabrina McMann, and I'm the head of the pre-prep here at Moulsford. I'm a comparatively new member of the Moulsford team, having joined the school in April. Before taking on pre-prep, I was the deputy head teacher at Trinity School in Henley, and before that at Langley Hall Primary Academy. The pre-prep experience is a particularly special one for the boys. When they begin with us in reception at 4 years old, time is given to helping them familiarise themselves with the adults who will be supporting them, the learning environment, and of course, the boys in their class who will be staying with them throughout their journey through Moulsford. This familiarisation begins before their first official day at school. We hold New Boys' Days, where the boys come together in what will be their new setting in a relaxed and more informal way than you might expect from a proper day at school. Parents and boys are also offered a stay and play afternoon, where you can enjoy some slightly more structured activities together. Boys joining the pre-prep at any point other than the first day of reception class should expect the same level of nurture to help them settle into this new setting. When their place is confirmed and a class is allocated, the class teacher will contact you directly to arrange a meeting and to get to know your son a little before he starts. This will help him to feel more confident and reassured when he does join us. Our daily approach centres entirely around the boys, their happiness and enjoyment of learning. The staff build nurturing relationships with the boys. This allows them to not only hold mature conversations during our family service at lunch, but to trust that they always have an adult to speak to should they require guidance or support. Our staff are consistently easy to reach, whether it be by email or, in usual circumstances, a conversation at the start or end of a school day. We strive to respond to any communication within 24 hours, meaning that usually any concerns are dealt with efficiently, not allowing something relatively small to develop into anything bigger. At this point, some photographs will be shared with you of our boys across pre-prep, experiencing the Moulsford opportunities we hope your son can look forward to. The pre-prep curriculum is well-rounded and offers the boys the chance to experience a wide range of subjects, many taught by specialist teachers. Class teachers, with the invaluable support of teaching assistants, lead all core subjects such as phonics, English, maths, science and topic. As a boys' school, we have the ability to tailor our lessons to suit their interests to maintain maximum engagement with their learning. It certainly didn't take me long to realise that a list of adjectives to describe a dinosaur will be very much longer than a list to describe a doll. Beyond the core curriculum, the boys learn judo, PE, music, forest school, swimming, ICT, RE, global studies or modern foreign languages, art, and personal social health education. Reception class attend forest school weekly throughout the year, while years 1 and 2 alternate half-termly between swimming and forest school. For those of you unfamiliar with forest school, it's a child-centered inspirational learning process that offers opportunities for holistic growth through regular sessions. It develops confidence and self-esteem through learner-inspired hands-on experiences in a natural setting, which for Moulsford boys is in Ipsden Woods. The Forest School programme is ably led by 2 qualified members of the Moulsford staff. We understand that you lead very busy lives and a full wraparound care programme is of great importance. At Moulsford, the pre-prep boys can arrive from 8 AM for Early Bird Club, where they will sit quietly and read, talk with friends, or perhaps colour in. Currently, our arrival for school is quite different, but usually the rest of the boys would arrive between 8:25 and 8:40 AM. At the end of the day, we run a full activities programme with options including bikeability, board game club, music and movement, play ball, golf, drama, and much more, which all run until 4:15 PM. Should you require your son to stay at school later, we have late stay, which runs until 5:30 PM at a cost of £10. I do hope that's given you a good feel for our pre-prep and where boys start at Moulsford. But please do ask any questions via the Q&A box and I'll answer them when we pause. So, when the boys leave us at the end of year 2, they are well prepared for life in the prep school. I'm now going to hand over to our Deputy Head Academic, Mrs. Tiffany Squire, who's going to tell you about the boys' onward journey into the prep school in year 3 and beyond.
Thank you. My name is Tiffany Squire. I'm the Deputy Head Academic and Director of IT. I've been at Moulsford for 11 years and I'm in a position as Deputy Head for just over 4 years. My husband is also at Moulsford and amongst other things, he's the Forest School leader, Forest School being one of the areas that Sabrina has just been talking about. We have a son at Moulsford who's currently in year 2, and you may have seen our bearded collie in pictures. His name is Bosun and he's also known as the Forest School dog. I'm going to outline the school structure from year 3 upwards, and whilst I do so, there will be some photos for you to have a look at, which highlights a little bit more about Moulsford life. Boys in year 3 and 4 are largely class taught, as we believe that it is important for them to have this consistency. They do go to specialist teachers for subjects such as ICT, DT, music and art. In year 5, the boys are streamed and put into 3 forms, which consist of 1 upper form and 2 core forms. Maths is also set at this point in order to ensure that lessons are pitched to the pace that each boy needs. We get to know the boys really well during their time in year 3 and 4, and of course the pre-prep if they've come through Moulsford, and we're therefore well placed to make these decisions about the best place to put them in year 5. At the end of year 6, we make a decision about which boys, whether boys should follow the scholarship route into their chosen senior school or the common entrance route. Our curriculum for core subjects is based on the national curriculum for Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3. This prepares them very well for pre-tests for senior schools and also for life beyond in their senior school itself. In non-core subjects, we've developed our own curriculums. In all subjects, we focus on what we call soft skills, as well as the acquisition of subject knowledge. These include, but are not limited to, creativity, communication, independence, resilience, collaboration, leadership, and presentation, to name but a few. Exams open the door to opportunity, but it's these softer skills which will define success in the workplace for your boys in the 21st century. Where possible, where appropriate, cross-curricular links are made between subjects. A great example of this is the Dragon's Den project in year 7, where boys create a company and an idea for a product. They then create a website for their company in ICT. They create a design board in DT and an advert in art and drama. They handle their own finances, which requires application of their math skills, and present to a panel of dragons at the end. In pre-prep, as Sabrina has said, pupils have global studies, which is a very important thing to do, particularly as South Oxfordshire is perhaps not one of the most diverse of places. In year 3 to year 8, all boys have the opportunity to learn Spanish, and in year 6, they make a choice between studying Latin and Spanish. And all boys throughout the school also learn French. Boys who follow the scholarship route into their senior school will not have the choice between Latin and Spanish because Latin is part of most of the scholarships. Boys have homework, which we call prep, and that's to support their learning in the classroom. In the lower school, they have spellings and timetables to practice, and all boys are encouraged to read on a regular basis. Some homework is an extension of the work they've been doing in class to demonstrate that they're able to apply skills independently, and other prep requires them actually to prepare for a lesson. Should your son need extra support, we have a very good learning support department who are able to provide your son with one-to-one lessons should this be necessary, and they also run group interventions. We have our very own super curriculum designed for boys who need stretching and challenging, but this is actually accessible to all. Pre-pandemic, we were organising lunchtime lectures for those who wish to attend, but because of the current situation, we're looking at holding these virtually. We don't forget those children who are perhaps the middle ground. We believe that it's important for all boys to find their niche and pursue their passions. Staff meet very regularly to discuss the boys' progress from a pastoral and academic perspective. The school is incredibly well equipped with IT resources, and we use Google Classroom and the Google Education Suite. This enabled us to slip seamlessly into online learning during lockdown. Each boy in years 4 to 8 has an iPad, and we have 2 computer rooms equipped with Macs. During the time at Moulsford, boys will have the opportunity to use the Mac operating system as well as Windows, and of course the Google platform. The emphasis in IT, as in all subjects, is on learning skills rather than just focusing on a particular suite of tools. I hope that's given you a good overview of the academic side of life at Moulsford, but please do feel free to ask questions via the Q&A, and I will answer them when we pause. I'm now going to hand back over to Mr. Jim Hamilton-Smith, who you met at the beginning, and he's going to tell you more about the pastoral care at Moulsford.
Thank you, Mrs. Squire. Yes, as I said earlier, I am Jim Hamilton-Smith. I'm Deputy Head Pastoral here at Moulsford. I teach science presently, as well as all games across all the year groups. And I've been here for almost 9 years now. Before that, I worked at Caldecott Prep School. I have a son who's been through Moulsford from the reception, and a stepson also who started in year 3. Just to top it all off, I was actually a pupil here myself some years ago. So I'm going to talk to you about the pastoral side of Moulsford. And as the headmaster said, our main goal is for all boys to be happy at Moulsford. In order to achieve this, we make sure that we know every child as an individual. We do this firstly by having a form tutor for each boy who'll have a good deal of contact time with your son, and we'll see him regularly through the day, especially at form time and registration times. The first point of contact for parents is the form head, who is then supported by a head of year. The heads of year meet on a weekly basis with myself and the headmaster to go through pastoral and academic issues that may arise. And in the pre-prep department, Mrs. McMann, as head of pre-prep, also leads a weekly meeting with her staff in her department, again attended by the headmaster. Now, an important part of life at Moulsford is in the boarding house, where we have 35 beds and the capacity for more than 50 boys to board with our flexi boarding model. Mr. Noble is head of the boarding house, and along with Mrs. Noble and the boarding house staff, keep a close eye on the well-being of these boys. And again, they have regular meetings which work in tandem with the online boarding tracker system that we use. The school matron plays an important role too, not just to help with the bumps and bruises, but also as another person to see, to talk to, and to share any concerns that boys may have. Indeed, the boys themselves play an important role. Boys coming into year 3 are buddied up with a boy in year 7 who helps them find their feet, keeps an eye out for them around school and during free time. And finally, you as parents play an important role too. We find that open lines of communication are very important to help us keep in communication and work together to support your sons and help them achieve their full potential. Now, to support this pastoral provision, we have a number of systems in place, including AS tracking, otherwise known as effective social tracking. This is a mental health tracking tool that enables schools to identify pupils' hidden risks early and equip teachers with in-school and targeted action plans to help reduce pupil mental health and well-being risks. We began this about 3 years ago, and now all the boys from year 3 through to year 8 are part of the AS tracking system. Working in conjunction with this is our Learning for Life program, otherwise known as the PSHE program, which includes outside speakers coming to talk to the boys and also the annual visit of our life education bus. Now, during these unprecedented times, the well-being of the boys has been of the utmost importance. And during lockdown, we did a number of well-being surveys with the boys and also staff in order to identify any general areas or individual pupils that needed extra support. Staff have been trained in mental health first aid. We have a qualified teacher delivering mindfulness courses to year 3 pupils, and all staff are embarking on an online mental health and wellbeing CPD course at present. We also have a school counsellor who comes into school every Friday to see the boys either through an arranged appointment or on an ad hoc basis. I mentioned the pupils' input earlier, and the boys make further contributions to school life in a number of areas. Most notably is the school council, which is made up of boys from every year group. They've recently been involved in the review of the school sanctions policy, and they regularly input the school's anti-bullying charter as well. They also put forward new ideas, including the recent introduction of table tennis tables, a zip wire, which is hugely popular, and even Moulsford's first ever beehive. Now, boys obviously respond well to positive encouragement, and the school reward system allows the boys to earn house points for good behaviour, kindness, and effort. This goes towards a running total for points within the house competition, which, as you can imagine, is hotly contested each term. As we know, boys need to be active, and at Moulsford, there is every opportunity for boys to take part in all manner of physical activities. All the boys from year 3 upwards have the opportunity to represent the school in matches for the major sports of rugby, football, hockey, and cricket, as well as a number of other sports, including judo, fencing, tennis, athletics, cross country, and even borders table tennis and basketball fixtures that we have had. Other opportunities appear as part of the activities program, which runs as after-school clubs and can lead to the boys earning what we call the Moulsford Award. In order to do this, they must take part in activities that fall under the following headings of healthy living, performance and arts, self-development, community and service, and adventure and challenge. Such activities include visiting our local old people's home, taking part in the Eco Club, gardening, litter picking, art and crafts, archery, and of course the numerous river-based activities that we have. All these opportunities are open to every student with a focus on fun, effort, and personal development. Finally, as a community, we look to make a considerable contribution through our charity fundraising. We have 2 members of staff who oversee our charity work, and we raise an amazing amount of money every year. This year, our chosen charities are the Rivertime Trust and Mary's Meals. And fundraising is done in a number of different ways, but one of the most popular must be the Moulsford Mudder, which is enjoyed by boys and staff alike, as I'm sure you can see from the photograph on the screen. Finally, I would just return to what the headmaster said earlier. It is most important to us that the boys are happy at Moulsford, and happiness is one of our 5 core values here at school. The happiness of the boys, the opportunities that they experience, the community which they are a part of, the support that they give to each other, which all helps develop the well-rounded young man who leaves Moulsford at the end of year 8. Now, I hope that gives you some indication of the nurturing side of the Moulsford community and how ultimately our primary aim is for the boys to be settled, have fun, and enjoy coming to school.
Well, thank you to Jim, Tiffany, and Sabrina. And now for our final speaker, I'd like to introduce you to Jill Morrin, who is our Registrar. And Jill will run you through the admissions process should you decide that Moulsford is the right school for your son.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jill Morrin, and I'm the Registrar here at Moulsford. My job is to guide you through the admission process from the first telephone call or email right through to your boys joining the school, and to make this process as smooth as possible for you all. I'm currently preparing for the entrance assessment for Year 3 and Year 4 entry in September 2021. The entrance assessment for these year groups is taking place on Saturday the 7th of November in the morning. If you have boys who would be interested in joining these year groups next September, you need to register them by Friday the 16th of October at the latest in order for them to sit the assessment. In addition, I am also working through our list of all boys currently registered with us for reception class for next year. If you require a place in the reception class for your son, again, please register him with us as soon as possible. Registration forms can be downloaded from our school website, or I can send one out to you if you give me a call or drop me an email. All our contact details can be found on the website. I'd love to hear from you with any admission questions you may have, so please don't hesitate to get in touch. I'm very happy to take your questions at the Q&A session, but otherwise I look forward to hearing from you all soon. For now, I'll hand you back to the headmaster.
Thank you, Jill. And we'd now like to open the floor for our Q&A session, and you're invited to type and send in any questions. And as well as those who you've heard speaking so far, we will also be joined by Mr. Jamie Noble, who is our head of boarding, Mrs. Annabelle Bush, who is head of learning support, and Mrs. Laura Wood, who is a current parent, and all are very happy to answer your questions. So how this will work is I'll read your questions out, and then each of us will answer verbally so that everyone can hear our answers. A reminder that you can tick the anonymous box before submitting your question if you prefer. So here we go. Let's have a look at your questions. So the first question is, could you please advise the percentage of boys who leave at 11 plus versus the percentage staying through to the end of Moulsford at 13? Okay, well, I'll answer this question. So in year 6, which is 11 plus, we have, it's about 54 boys in a year group. There might be 1 or 2 boys who leave before they go into year 7. So the answer is the vast majority stay on and leave at the end of year 8 for year 9 entry to senior school. But thank you for that question. Next question is about languages, and I think I'll ask Mrs. Squire if she could answer this one. So I'll read out the question. So we are delighted that you offer language learning. How many sessions a week are there, and are there opportunities for extended hours and/or immersion? So over to you, Mrs. Squire, for this one.
Okay, so in pre-prep, as we've already said, there's global studies, and that's a session a week. But actually, within all of the topic work, not just in pre-prep, but throughout the school, there are links made to cultural diversity. In year 3 and year 4, we have 2 sessions a week, which covers French and Spanish. And really, the ethos behind the languages department, again, throughout the school, but particularly at the beginning, is just to get a love of learning languages. There is a bit of an issue later on, I believe, in terms of things like GCSE take up with languages, for example. And we're really trying our best to just instill that love of learning, really, of those languages. The number of lessons increase as you go up the school, and there is more focus on things like grammar and, of course, written languages as well as spoken language as well. As I say, when they get to year 6, most boys have this choice between Latin and Spanish, but all boys continue to learn French throughout the school. In terms of immersion, there are all sorts of initiatives which our very, very passionate language department run. Things like European Day of Languages, for example. We have a French day where boys are encouraged to come in for a French breakfast. We have a Spanish day where it's always food related with Moulsford, but we have lots of things that happen there, and quizzes and treasure hunts around the school and those kind of things as well. So from an immersion point of view, that definitely happens. We've always run a French trip in year 6, and obviously that's been difficult. We were unfortunately had to cancel that this year, but this is a very, very important time for those year 6 boys when they can go to France and actually speak the language and immerse that way. We also are very, very aware that we have lots of parents who perhaps holiday in particularly France and Spain and are very keen for their boys to use the language while they're out there, and it's wonderful to hear the adventures that they get up to when they've been abroad. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Squire. But the next question is about class sizes, which I will answer. So please, could you provide us with an idea of typical class sizes across the year groups? So class sizes vary, but on average, the largest sort of classes at Moulsford tend to be around about the 18 mark. I think that sort of between 15 and 18 is probably about the average class size. We do have one class which is 19. There is another class that is 20, but they are unusual. So 15 to 18 is about the average class size. I'm going to ask Mr. Hamilton Smith to answer the next question. It's about pastoral care. So here it is. So please, can you tell us more about pastoral care, the policies for bullying and discipline, and also about parental involvement and how we can keep in touch with the school?
Thank you, Headmaster. Yeah, it's just sort of going on what I said a little bit earlier in terms of pastoral care. It's very much a team effort at Moulsford, and obviously we have our layers of form head and heads of year, myself as pastoral deputy head, and so it's a massive communication link really, and as I said as well, knowing every individual student is hugely important, and the communication across the staff room to make sure we're aware of things going on it plays a massive part. And again, that falls into boarding as well, and also into the medical side of things with our school matron as well. So every member of staff is on side in terms of pastoral care. In terms of policies for bullying, obviously we have a bullying policy. It's on our school website. Obviously, in terms of bullying, we see that as being, behavior which is repeated and habitual. And I would like to think that actually here at Moulsford, when a boy is unkind to somebody else, we're able to step in early and deal with things early before it gets to a serious point. That's certainly what we try to do. And I feel we're fairly successful in that, and making sure that we keep the boys, as I said earlier, all very happy and enjoying their experience of Moulsford. In terms of discipline, we do have a discipline system. And of course, again, I mentioned the fact that we would like to instill positive reinforcement with our boys, but obviously there does come a time when they need to have a sanction for some misbehaviors. The way we run that is, first and foremost, if it's very low level, obviously they will have a word from maybe their form head, maybe their head of year. If it's deemed necessary, our next line of sanction is to have a midweek detention. And if a midweek detention is received on 3 occasions during a term, the boys will receive a minus house point, which is when they have to go and explain themselves to the headmaster. So there's systems in place. And obviously, again, communication is paramount, not just there across the staffing communication links, but also with parents as well. And I think that's part of the question as well in terms of parental involvement. We will stay, in touch with you about everything, even low-level incidents, so you're just aware of things that are going on at school, so you can helpfully reinforce messages that we give boys at school once they're at home as well. And communication is done usually, certainly in the younger years, in normal times, there's often time to talk to form teachers at the beginning of the school day, at the end of the school day, or when we move up to the top end of the school, maybe it's a little bit more through email and telephone conversations. At the moment, we are doing a lot of Zooms, as you would imagine. But however way we do it, communication is key, and we are very open and receptive to receiving your thoughts on things and being able to feedback what's happening from school as well. So hopefully that answers that question there.
Thank you very much, Jim. The next question I'm going to hand over to Mrs. McMann. It's about Forest School. So the question is, our son currently attends a progressive outdoor forest nursery. How would this relate to the reception year at Moulsford, and what can we do to prepare and support the transition?
So any children that are attending a forest school nursery are already being exposed to the natural world, and they're being taught how to keep themselves safe and how to take reasonable risk. That continues, their journey of that will continue into reception class, obviously in what is likely to be a bigger forest setting, and then they will be able to apply what they've already learnt at their existing forest school into our forest school. And their experiences then will be hopefully more challenging for them, where they will be able to take perhaps some skills of firelighting that they may have already started upon and apply it to some cooking. I know that the boys have previously done things like pancakes and made hot drinks, as well as climbing, den building, etc. Forest School is also able to completely enrich the children's core curriculum. So their existing curriculum that they'll be learning in the classroom can then be applied when they're out on their Forest School expeditions. In terms of the transition, I think that if your son is at a Forest School nursery, they are experiencing what perhaps some boys aren't necessarily experiencing yet, and therefore they will be amply prepared for transitioning into Reception Forest School. I do hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. Now we have a question about boarding, and I'll ask Mr. Jamie Noble to answer this one. So how does the experience differ between day and boarding? And frankly, do the children separate socially and become cliquey? Over to you, Jamie.
Thank you, Headmaster. So I think the first thing to say there is that boarding is very much, in terms of culture and values, it's an extension of the school day. In-house, our structures mean that boys mix a lot, and yes, friendships are very strongly developed and intensified. But in terms of the activities that we offer, the structures that are in place, boys in different year groups will mix with each other for activities, for their social time. So yes, friendships do develop, they become stronger, but there is a culture in place that means that boys aren't spending all of their time just with the same 2 or 3 people. There's a constant sort of social mixing. In terms of opportunities for day boys as well to see the boarding house and to understand what goes on here, it's not an us and them sort of scenario either. So we have a breakfast club, which enables day boys to come and have breakfast with boarders. We offer what we call day boarding, which is regularly used, whereby day boys also can stay late and join the boarders as part of their evening routine until 8 o'clock. We also have regular trial boarding. Two sides to that. One for those who are actually actively considering boarding at Moulsford. They can come in and sample some boarding on an ad hoc basis. But we also have initiatives whereby we have whole year groups coming into the house as well to experience boarding together. With all of this in mind, I think that the short answer to the question is no, we don't tend to find that boys are cliquey. There's so much sort of mixing socially through their lesson time in the school day, through their sport, through their activities, and then through the structures of the boarding house as well, that Moulsford boys, whether boarding or not, tend to be very sociable and sort of respectful and considerate as a community. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much, Jamie. And I think it's probably worth adding that, I mean, all the children at Moulsford live within roughly 15 miles of the school. And so the boys who are boarding have come through the school as day children. And yeah, they all know each other before they actually get to the boarding house. Now, we've got a number of other questions, which we're very keen to answer. But before we do so, we'd like to share with you an online poll, which will help us understand how you found today's event, so that we can improve for future virtual open days. So in a moment, you will see an inset screen, which will ask you 3 short questions to which multiple choice answers are provided. And we'd be very grateful if you just take a moment to read and answer the questions before we return to the final questions. So there you, as I say, you should see it on your screen. And thank you very much for just taking a moment to answer those. So we'll just wait a few more moments for anyone else to complete the short survey. So thank you very much. As I say, we're extremely grateful for your input. That should make a big difference to us for future virtual open days. As I said, we've never run one of these before, and it's just really good to get your feedback. So let's go back to the questions. Now, next question is about additional tutoring. I'm going to pass this one on to Mrs. Squire. So what is your policy on additional tutoring? Is it expected, encouraged, or deemed unnecessary?
Okay, thank you. Yes, tutoring is definitely a hot topic, particularly in independent schools, I think. And I think in order to answer the question, it depends on why you feel tutoring is necessary as a parent. We don't encourage it. We don't actively say to people, you need to go out and find a tutor. That's not the way we work. If you feel that your son needs tutoring in order to get into an academically selective senior school, then I think we would have a conversation with you about whether that was the right senior school for your son, if they do need tutoring to get there. In terms of other tutoring, if it's the case that you feel that your son's maybe slightly falling behind or they're not making the progress that they should be, first of all, that should have already been a discussion that's happened between you and the class teachers. But I would really, really urge you to speak to the school and explain your concerns so that we can explore what we can do from a school angle to support your son. There's lots and lots of different specialists here, and it might be that your son actually has a hidden learning difficulty, and we pick up as many as we possibly can. But sometimes those learning difficulties don't show their heads until perhaps a little bit older, when the boys are a little bit older. And sometimes they have very, very good coping mechanisms as well to deal with them. We should be sort of, dealing with those issues in school, as I say, rather than you going to see a tutor. That said, we're very, very aware that some parents, no matter what we say, like to have a tutor because it's sort of peace of mind and it's that extra bit of work and they want to do that. So we certainly wouldn't look negatively upon anybody who does it. But as I say, we would urge you just to come and have a conversation with us about the reasons why you feel your son needs one. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Squire. So I'm going to hand this question on to Mr. Hamilton-Smith because it's very much a pastoral question. How do you instill a sense of belonging for boys from an ethnically diverse background? Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Headmaster. I think that starts with the point that Mr. Noble was saying, is that we are one huge community here at Moulsford, and we have a number of boys from different religious backgrounds and from different ethnically diverse backgrounds as well. And it's something here, obviously we're an educational establishment and we're looking to educate the boys about all these things, and we look to celebrate it as well. And certainly as part of our Learning for Life program, as well as our religious education, we celebrate different backgrounds, different religions, and I certainly know that the boys enjoy things like the Festival of Colour that some of our younger boys get heavily involved in each year, and the school becomes literally an area of powdered paints and everything all over the place. So it's very much inclusive, it's very much educating the boys and creating what is the normal really at Moulsford. And as I say, it is part of the boys' education and celebration.
Thank you, Jim. We have another boarding question, which I'm going to ask Mr. Noble to answer. So for boarding from year 5, are the dormitories mixed age groups?
Thank you, Headmaster. So the short answer on this is that it depends slightly on the cohort that we have in the house. But in general terms, we will have mixed dormitories. So we might have some year 5 boys with some year 6 boys, for example. We might have year 7 boys with year 8 boys. Very, very rarely would you see more than a 2-year sort of gap. So you wouldn't see year 5 boys in a dormitory with year 8 boys, for example. And that sort of hinges around bedtimes, stages of development, and so on. Likewise, though, it's really good for boys to make friendships with boys in other year groups. And our structure in the boarding house is not particularly hierarchical. It's very family orientated. So we take it on a case-by-case basis. I put a huge amount of time and thought into who shares dormitories with who. But any decisions made will be sort of appropriate to the child in question. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Now we have a question about teaching during lockdown, which I'll say a few words about, but then hand over to Mrs. Squire. And the question is, how did you teach the boys during the lockdown period? Well, that, as you will well know, came upon us very, very fast in March, and so we had to make the switch to virtual teaching extremely swiftly. We were in a very good position in that we have invested very heavily in IT over a 12-year period. We have roughly had some £1 million of capital expenditure over that period, and so in terms of making the sort of transition, things were reasonably smooth, but we learned a huge amount, particularly in that first week, and we took a lot of feedback from parents and boys so that over the Easter holidays we could fully prepare for the summer term. So if I hand over to Mrs. Squire now, who can just talk to you about how that virtual teaching worked.
So this was a learning curve for all schools, obviously, but as Mr. Bibble-Gray said, we were able to go quite seamlessly from a technical point of view into online learning. One of the things that we noted from a very, very early stage is that the thing that the boys really, really missed is humans, and actually as teachers we all missed it as well, being around people and having those social interactions. And so what we did is we ensured that things were as normal as they possibly could be, that we followed a very disciplined structure for the school day, because we felt that was very important for the boys, but that they saw their teachers as much as possible. So we did that through a combination of live teaching, which was our sort of the main part of our teaching really. So we use Google Meet, Google Classroom, and the Google Suites education of the tools there. And we made sure, as I say, that they saw their teacher, and their teacher was actually teaching them live as much as possible. Sometimes it involved teachers recording a video, which they could then play and replay as they needed to. But the communication was the biggest part for us, and not just communication with the boys themselves, but also with parents. So if there was a boy that was particularly struggling, and perhaps they didn't want to sort of make themselves very sort of visible from that sense, we had the communication with parents that they said to us, actually, you know, they've really struggled with that lesson, and we could discuss things. What we didn't do is just simply send off, you know, a copy of website links or, you know, a load of worksheets for the boys to complete. As I say, we tried to keep things as normal as possible, and linked with our general educational ethos.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Squire, and we're going to keep you on there actually, because the next question is very much academic related as well, and it is it just maths and English which are streamed?
There's lots and lots of flexibility. As I said to you when I was speaking earlier, it's in year 5 where we have our 3 slightly different forms. So we have a top form and then 2 core. The math sets are very, very flexible. So it might be that a boy is in perhaps one of the higher streamed forms, but needs to go into one of the core math sets, and that's absolutely fine, and vice versa, of course. In terms of other subjects, the form goes and does all of the different subjects together. But the real big advantage to Moulsford Prep School is that the same teacher is likely to be teaching. So let's say DT, for example, it is the same teacher who's teaching the top forms as they are the core. And so they get to know all of the boys and can stretch and challenge those who need it. So it might be that you have a boy that's not particularly academically strong, but they may well be strong in art and music or drama, for example. And because it's the same staff, they are able to sort of push where necessary and also support where necessary as well.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Squire. So the next question I will answer is, how many boys do you typically have joining at year 5? Well, that will vary from year to year, and it also depends on the number of places that we have available in year 5. But I would say on average, it's probably about 4 or 5 boys a year who would join year 5. The main points of entry would be in reception the first year. We have a reasonably large entry into year 3, but we do have boys who join pretty much every other year group up into year 7. So it is fairly fluid in terms of joining the school. And we also have a question here, which is about the Year 3 November assessment, so I'll answer that as well. The question is, if our son is offered a place for the Year 3 entry following the November assessment, when will we find out? Well, the answer is fairly swiftly. So that assessment happens on, I think it's Saturday, the 6th of November, and we would hope to be getting back to you by the end of the following week. Right, we have a languages question. So I'm going to hand this over to Mrs. Squire again. So for boys joining the prep school from the state sector who haven't studied languages before, how do they catch up?
So this happens quite often, actually. And as I say, we have a very passionate language department and all of our staff actually in all subjects are able to assess boys quite quickly. We have different kinds of assessments, as all schools do, in terms of sort of more formal assessments, as well as teacher judgment during lessons. Because there's a real emphasis on, as I say, lower down the school, we have lots of singing, lots of actions, lots of different ways for the boys to just, acquire that love and understanding of languages. It suits boys who haven't had any language exposure at all very well, in fact. We have had a few instances where we've got boys who have joined much higher up the school and are looking at Latin and Spanish. And I know that our head of Spanish, Madam Lancaster, is very, very happy to spend some extra time with boys who might be in that particular situation. So it's something that we're aware of, and it's something that we deal with in-house.
Thank you very much. Now we have another question related to when boys leave the school, and so I'll answer this question. So, if so few boys leave at 11 plus, are those boys at a disadvantage for preparation versus those staying for 13 plus? Very, very good question, and I would say the answer is absolutely not, because actually the preparation and the exams and entries for boys going into senior schools, whether they're going into a senior school at year 7 or year 9, those tests happen in year 6. So all our boys who are leaving Moulsford at the end of year 8, they will take a pre-test to their senior school in year 6. They will hopefully be offered a place in year 6, and then they'll have their last couple of years at Moulsford. So essentially they are all those boys are getting exactly the same preparation. We are totally geared up for the fact that we know boys are going to be taking a pre-test in year 6, and so our curriculum is centered around making sure that they are ready at that stage. Possibly worst is coming back to that question about when boys are leaving the school, and I think it's fair to say that 7 or 8 years ago, Moulsford might have lost about roughly 20% of the year group might have left at the end of year 6. That has gone right down to those numbers I gave you previously. So it's literally only 1 or 2 boys now who will leave at the end of year 6. So I think that the vast majority of parents who send their boys to Moulsford now want the boys to complete a Moulsford education and would like the boys to stay until year 8. So we got another question about boys joining the school, and I'm going to hand this to Mrs. Squire again. So do children join from state schools, and do you find that there is a gap in learning? If so, how is this managed?
Boys do join from state schools, and they join from schools, actually independent schools as well. And one of the first things we do is that we actually look at whether there are any gaps in learning. Sometimes that is the case, sometimes it's not the case. What we do at the beginning of every single year is we actually assess all of the boys in our school, and we use baseline tests, which we call Chem. And probably if your son is at a prep school or a primary school at the moment, you will be familiar with baseline testing. This enables us to see if they're making the progress that we expect throughout the school. But it also gives us the opportunity just to spot if there are any discrepancies. And I was talking earlier about learning difficulties, for example, finding out whether there's a boy who perhaps does have a learning difficulty, or whether in fact it is just simply a case that they do have gaps in their learning. Again, the staff are very, very good in each different subject at looking at, whether this is the case. Sometimes there can be it can be more attitude than aptitude, it has to be said, and it's up to us to work out that difference and whether it is a gap in learning or whether there is a difficulty there.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Squire. So we have a question about interaction with girls' schools. So I'll answer this question. So is there any interaction with girls' schools? Could we hear the headmaster's view on whether this is important or not at a prep school? So now, look, we don't have any formal links with girls' schools, but we have plenty of informal links. So you may be aware that there is a girls' school. It's actually a co-educational school literally just down the road from us called Cranford House, and a lot of the boys' sisters are at Cranford, and we have over the years we've had just a number of so close links with Cranford. So that might relate to doing drama days or design technology days. We have discos as well, and that encompasses a variety of other schools. So Rupert House, Cranford House, the Manor, Helen's and Catherine's involved in those. Now, as to whether it's important or not at a prep school, this is a question I get asked an awful lot. I mean, my sort of stock answer that it's, I mean, I worked at, well, I ran a very successful co-educational school before coming here. So it'd be disingenuous of me to say that, all boys school is, the only way forward. What I would say to parents is the most important thing is that you choose a really good school. Personally, I would not get too hung up on whether it's all boys, it's all girls, it's co-educational. What you want is the best school for your child. Now, we are an all boys school, and everything we do focuses on boys and what makes boys tick. So our whole curriculum is geared around really keeping boys engaged, really keeping their enthusiasm up. And so our lessons are all structured around that. The fact that sport is so important here. There's an element of competition in there, which boys respond really, really well to. Any staff we're employing, we are thinking, are they going to not only be fantastic classroom teachers, but can they offer something outside of the classroom that is really going to enthuse boys? So being an all-boys school, I'd say everything is geared around that. We believe in the modern world that we live in, the fact that we're a day school, boys have a lot of contact with girls outside of schools. The vast majority of the boys have sisters. Families here are all plugged into their local communities. They're socializing a lot with other families at the weekends with lots of girls. So it's very different from, say, my experience. I went to school at a boarding school 30 years ago, and I had very little contact with girls. I think the experience that the boys have now is very, very different. Right, moving on to a question about music tuition. Is music tuition an additional fee? So there's really two types of music tuition. So class music is taught to all the boys as part of the curriculum, and there is no additional fee for that, as it's just part of the normal school day. If boys would like to learn an additional individual instrument, such as the trumpet, the piano, the trombone, the cello, they can play pretty much any instrument that they'd like to. Yes, there is an additional fee for that, because we have a whole team of visiting music teachers who come in on 1 or 2 days or during the week, depending on their other timetables with other schools, and the boys will come out of a normal lesson. It's done on rotation, so they're not hitting the same lesson every week, and there is an additional fee for that. Okay, So just reading a question here. So regards sport and music, what happens when? Could you please explain what happens and who is eligible at the various levels, e.g. trial, audition only? How many pupils learn a musical instrument and for how long? Do all the children get a chance to perform regularly? Is sport for all abilities? If our child is keen on sport but unlikely to make the first team, would they have lots of opportunity to play and progress? Okay, so just to sort of, I'll give a general answer to this question and then we'll try and look at specifics. We are all about providing opportunities for every single boy in the school. Okay, so if we're talking about sport, it is not just about sport for those boys who are in the A and the B teams. We want absolutely every boy to make sure that they have coaching and that they have an opportunity to represent the school. So we will, on the sporting front, we will run as many teams as there are boys in the year group. And I would expect every boy from year 3 upwards in the autumn and spring terms to be representing the school in about 8 or 9 fixtures against other prep schools. And that philosophy is transferred across the whole school. So if one took it to drama, for example, we make sure that we are putting on productions where as many boys as possible are going to be able to get really proper meaningful parts. If we took the year 7 play last year, we put on Joseph, and Joseph has roughly about 17 big parts, but last year we double cast it, which meant that we could get 34 boys playing the lead parts. We ran it over 4 nights, so for 2 nights boys might be playing a lead part and then they drop down to the chorus for the other 2 nights and vice versa. Okay, so it's all about making sure that everyone gets an opportunity in all disciplines. In terms of how many boys learn a musical instrument, it's from year 3 upwards, it's roughly 75% of the boys will play an instrument. Some of those boys will play 2. We have about trial and auditions for sports and music. Well, for sports, we've talked about that, but for music, so we have a junior choir, which every single boy is who is in years 3 and 4 is part of the junior choir. They're automatically in it. If they're in year 5, they can join the junior choir as well. We have a senior choir, years 6, 7, and 8. That is by audition, but it's extremely inclusive. There are 60 boys in that, and there is another choir as well, which is a pop choir, which sings a slightly different repertoire, and there are about 35 boys in that. The orchestra has about 50 boys in it as well. So we aim to be as inclusive as possible. Okay, so we have a question about assessment for year 1. And I'm going to hand this one over to Mrs. McMann. So how do you assess for entry into year 1, Mrs. McMann?
So we do a number of things. Firstly, we encourage you and your son to come around the school to give him an opportunity to meet myself and meet the headmaster, and then he will come and sit with me for a short period of time and we will do a little bit of work together. I try and keep that relatively low key so it's not formal testing. We do some reading, do a little bit of phonics, a little bit of maths. Time dependent, we might do a little bit of writing. That would also depend on the time in the year as to the expectation I might have of the individual boy. And we also request a report from any current school that they are at, and if there's other reports that might be relevant for your son, we seek that information as well. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mrs. McMann. Now we have no more questions, so thank you very much for your excellent questions, and we really hope that you found the whole event informative and helpful today. And please do not hesitate to contact Jill Morrin, the registrar, should you have any follow-up questions, or if you'd like to book a further meeting or to an opportunity to visit the school. Now, finally, we know that our boys are our best ambassadors, and since you've been unable to meet them in person today, we've recorded a short video so that you can hear what some of our Year 8 boys have to say about the school. We'll send you the link for this video so that you can watch it in your own time. And we hope you enjoy hearing their honest thoughts from those boys. So one final thank you for attending our virtual open day today, and we look forward to meeting you and welcoming you to Moulsford soon. Goodbye all, and we'll now close the meeting.